Welcome back to the Shabbos Treasures series. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, and I'm here together with my co-host,
Rabbi Samuel Ross, and we are delighted to be able to share a weekly idea that you can take into your Shabbos and upgrade and beautify immediately. Enjoy! Tonight we are up to part 27, leaving food on the flame. That's what we're going to deal with tonight. So the last couple of weeks, if you recall, we dealt with reheating food, where we predominantly saw that you're allowed to reheat solids. Liquids is very difficult, and solids only in certain ways, hot plate and a few other things. We've got a couple of questions to kick tonight off with. Mrs. Yorna, maybe you would like to kick off question one.
I'm Mrs. Yorna, you're Rabbi Yorna. Okay, question number one. Could there possibly be any issue with leaving raw food on a heat source before Shabbos? Right, so you have some raw food, you leave it on a heat source, whether it's an oven, a hob, a slow cooker before Shabbos.
Right, and let's make the question even stronger. Let's say you're watering your lawn. There's nothing wrong with leaving your hose on. I mean, you turned it on before Shabbos. So what do we say about this one? Could there possibly be any
Daddy
problem?
doesn't like it.
With the lawn, it can make the lawn grow, so that's breaking Shabbos.
So Darren, it's actually not a problem because you did it before, and it's only a problem to do work, to do melacha on Shabbos itself. So it's, believe it or not, actually not a problem. Well, the question that we're asking is, what about when it comes to food? Is it the same rule with food as it is with the other melachas, the other works? Could you perhaps just leave food there, which is raw, and it will cook over Shabbos? Could there possibly be any problem with that?
Yeah, but you're not allowed to cook it. You're only allowed to reheat it, no?
It is very true. It's very true. But what I'm trying to explain, Darren, is when you come to the other there's 39 types of work. With the others, if you start it before Shabbos, it can carry on Shabbos. It's not a problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a problem. Okay, so we will see.
So Maddie doesn't like it, though.
No, I'm thinking it's not an issue.
Oh, okay.
As long as you're not changing, it's not going to change. So if something was a solid and it's going to change into a liquid as it's cooking, you can't do that. But if it's, say, like cholent, you can.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll come to it and we'll see what the circumstances you may or may not do it. Okay.
We will see. Hi, Stephen. Nice to see you.
There he is. Hello.
Yeah.
Question number two. If you're using a hot plate or a crock pot, a slow cooker, is there anything you need to do to it ahead of Shabbos so that you can put the food into it before Shabbos? Turn it on, yes, turn it on.
So that's definitely number one. And we weren't even thinking of that one, Mr. Genius.
I think he's more of a halachic point of view.
Turn it on.
A timer.
Do you have to have a timer?
No, not necessarily. You could just leave it on before. Yeah.
Okay.
That's taking the electricity.
Okay, so maybe adjust. Okay, so those are the couple of things that we need to. Okay, so let's explain where we are going from. Let's explain where we are going from. This is the story. Let me give you the introduction. A raw food that has begun cooking. So let's picture our raw cholent that's begun cooking may not be left on an uncovered flame, an uncovered heat source over Shabbos. Now, this is unusual because with most other melachas, again, I gave you the example of watering the lawn. You're allowed to turn it on before Shabbos, and it's allowed to carry on Shabbos. But when it comes to cooking and it comes to the heat source, you cannot leave raw food there. Let's just say your cholent. You can't just put it on a flame and leave it there over Shabbos, even though you put it there before Shabbos. It's a special restriction which is called shehiyoh. It's a special restriction that when it comes to cooking, cooking is unique, and you can't start it before Shabbos when it will carry on Shabbos. And this is why it's no good. Because the rabbis were worried that you're going to come to adjust the flame to make it cook faster. So Maddie, picture it, or Darren, picture this. It's Friday night and you realize that the food is cooking too slowly. So it's true you put it on before Shabbos, but now you might accidentally, stir the pot or put the lid on or something like that, which is going to make it cook faster. So because of those sorts of concerns, the rabbis told us that cooking is unique. And if you start cooking it before Shabbos, you cannot just put it on a flame. You can't. It's not the same principle as every other work. Every other type of forbidden work, if you start it before Shabbos, you can keep going.
But a hot plate isn't a problem. A hot plate's fine.
So we're very good, Darren. We're going to go through crock pots and hot plates and things like that and see how you can do it, or how it's able to be done. But the principle is that if it's an uncovered flame, it doesn't work. You can't do it. Okay. So this is, Rabbi Gitter is now going to tell us the way that the rabbis who put this prohibition together allowed us to do it. We're going to use a word which actually Maddie used last week and introduced us to a word last week.
Okay, so basically, the way to do it is to cover it with a blech. Okay, so a blech is a blech is
a blech.
A blech is a blech, which but what's
a blech?
Exactly. He just likes the word, hey? It's a metal sheet, right? That you put on top of, let's say, a gas stove. I don't know if you can use it on top of a glass, like a regular, not an electric. You could put it probably on an electric hob as well, but it's basically that's what it is. It's a sheet of metal placed over the grates and the burners, and it's that's what it is, right?
That's very good. That's what it is. So the way that you are allowed to do it, and it's based on a Mishna, it's based on a Gemara. Again, the problem is you can't leave the heat source uncovered because we're worried that you're going to start messing around with it. Once you've got this metal sheet, which is covering the fire, and it's also covering the temperature the controls or the knobs on the oven or whatever you have there. So you're not going to possibly turn it up or turn it down or do anything with it because it's being covered. So I know Jeremy made the joke on the group last week, like who would even use a blech anymore because who can afford to have electricity running for that long? But even if you could, even if electricity was free, the way that you would do it is you would have this metal sheet covering the flame and covering the dials, the knobs that are on the oven. And then you would be okay because the way the rabbi set it up was they were worried that you were going to turn the heat, you were going to mess around with it and turn it up, to make it cook faster. So now we don't have to worry about it because you've covered the fire and you've also covered the dials. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try and make this. a little bit simpler. Does everybody get the principle of what the potential problem was and why the blech overcomes the problem? Right? The problem was you're going to mess around with the dials. You're going to make it cook faster or slower. Once I've got my metal sheet covering the fire and covering the dials, covering the knobs, I'm not going to touch it. Let's ask them the question, what about if they forgot? What about if you forgot to put the blech on? You forgot and you've left it on your gas ring and your steak is bubbling away and it's Friday night. Can you serve it? Can you eat it?
You just have to take it off, but leave the gas on.
But the problem is, let's say you put it on raw and I have to have the blech. I'm not allowed to do it. What do I do now?
Let your house burn down. No, you're gonna have to ask someone.
Well, you could definitely solve the problem of taking it off.
Help you out from next door.
But you have to ask somebody non-Jewish to come and.
But again,
no, you don't have to ask. You can take it off yourself.
The question is, can you eat it?
But can you eat it? Are you allowed to? Because usually, if you cook something on Shabbos, which you're not allowed to cook, you're not allowed to eat that food on Shabbos. If you by mistake cook something, you wouldn't be allowed to eat it.
So no.
What happens if you cook it by mistake, but you serve it to somebody else? Are they allowed to eat it?
That doesn't make any difference. It's a good question. But the question is, when could you eat it? So the answer is that it would have to be a third cooked.
Before Shabbos.
Before Shabbos. If it was a third cooked, because we say that once something is a third cooked, it's enough cooked. It's enough cooked to consider it cooked. So you have to picture, let's say something takes an hour to cook. Once it's 20 minutes in, that would be enough that now if you accidentally forgot your blech, you're going to be okay. Okay, everyone got that?
But what happened to your gas?
Okay, so again, that you either will go off or maybe you need to ask a non-Jew to turn off or something like that. But we're getting into the issue of the food itself. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, Rabbi Sigil will lead us through this. What we're going to do now is, we're going to look through, Darren asked a very good question earlier. So we've seen the principle is that this blech, this metal sheet of paper, this metal sheet of, not paper, of metal, whatever it is, this metal sheet, once it's covering the dials and it's covering the flame, you're allowed to cook on it. But how is that going to translate into the following three things? A crock pot, a hot plate, and an oven. That's what we're going to go through now. So let's look at an oven first. I think Stephen will enjoy these because these are very, very technical and very, very technical. What would be the equivalent? Because again, remember, what's the blech trying to do, guys? Why are we using the metal? What's it doing?
Keeping the
Sorry?
Is it to reduce the temperature?
It's to reduce the temperature, and it's to make sure you're not going to mess around with it. You're going to leave it alone. So once it comes to an oven, and I know Maddie asked this last week, but let's say you've got an oven and you're putting uncooked food in it. How would you put a blech? What would be the equivalent of putting a blech inside an oven?
So let's just say someone has an oven. Imagine that, right? So what they would have to do is usually the heat in an oven, although, I mean, nowadays it can come out, I mean, so it usually comes out the bottom, but sometimes it comes out the top, sometimes it comes out the back as well. So it's quite hard to cover the source of heat. So if it's an oven where you're only using the bottom source of heat, then you would only have to cover that with, let's say, a heavy duty piece of foil or one of those sheets that protect the oven. The other issue with this is that the thermostat is usually very sensitive, so a change in temperature can cause the oven to ignite right away. So that would be a problem with opening the oven door.
Yeah, so if you're all technically minded, so if the thermostat would go off straight away, you'd have a problem there. And it's like this. As I said last week, Maddie asked a question last week about cooking, putting raw food in an oven, even if the oven's on before Shabbos. It's best not to do it. It's very complicated. Number one, the thermostat, if it's very sensitive, might go off straight away. And the second thing is you'd have to find a way to put the blech in, which it might be that it's at the bottom, and to put some metal down there, put some silver foil down there.
If you've got an oven that's got a Shabbos mode, not that we have, because I don't use the oven on Shabbos, but if you had one, does the Shabbos mode just keep it regulated at one temperature the whole time?
It could be, and some of them are different. Some of them are different. I say
that to a set quantity. That's the whole idea of it.
Yeah, that's the idea of it. But again, some of them work differently. But yeah, that's the concept. Okay, so that's an oven. Again, that's why I said last week, stay away from it. It's complicated. You got to work out where the heating source is and to put the blech, and not even everyone agrees with it. And then you got to worry about the thermostat. Okay. The question is, Darren asked this question earlier about a hot plate. What would be the equivalent, or do you need a blech when it comes to a crock pot or a hot plate? Well, let's look at a hot plate first.
Okay, so hot plates, if firstly, a lot of hot plates do not have a temperature control.
No, do your things have a temperature control? I don't know if you have a hot plate, but okay, so there's no temperature control then
you don't need a blech, that's fine. Okay, it doesn't need anything on it because there's no way of adjusting the heat on it.
Right. It happens to be that for a technical reason, a crock pot, it's better to line it inside with aluminium foil and allow it to extend higher than the cylinder walls, not because this, for a different reason, something we'll see in a week or two, which is called insulated. It's a different reason. But in terms of a blech, if there's no temperature control, then the hot plate definitely doesn't need them. The crock pot, maybe for a different reason, you're going to put it there. Okay, what about if it has a temperature control?
So if it has a temperature control, then what so you can only use it if the food was mostly cooked before Shabbos. That means over a third, and the controls should be taped or covered before Shabbos.
Okay, so do you get that? That you're supposed, if it's got the temperature controls, you have to be careful about. You have to tape over you should put down the blech. You should put down like the metal foil. And then you're supposed to cover over the, if a hot plate in theory would have it, you should put down like a few layers of foil. But very important. This is very important. Something that's going to get us out of jail with most things. There is an exception to this rule, because if you've ever been to our house and you've seen the like a crock pot, we have a chillent on Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
How do we do that? At the end of the day, our crock pot has a temperature control. Okay, we should tape over the controls, but if it's got a temperature control, you're supposed to only put the food in if it's already cooked. Our chillent is not cooked. We put the raw food in. So why would that possibly be okay?
So, but here's the thing. If you're using raw meat, right, then you can put it in raw. And the reason then the food can be raw and it doesn't have to be a third cooked. And the reason is because meat takes a long time to cook, right? So when you're putting raw meat in, you're not doing it for the Friday night meal because it's not going to cook in time, right? It's going to have to be for the Shabbos day meal, right? So if you think about the amount of time after you light candles until the Friday night meal, it's not enough time. So there's no worry there that you're going to stir the food to make it cook faster. So therefore you're allowed to put raw meat and into and allow it to cook from raw.
So chillent is absolutely fine.
So the slow cooker, you have to cover the dial.
Yes, you're supposed to. You should cover it, yeah.
But what if you're not going to touch it? Can you leave it uncovered?
It's the same with anything. It's the same with the original concern about an oven. I know I won't touch it. They still said you should because we may be forgetful and may touch it. I did double check into it today, and it does appear that
or like somebody else will touch it rather than yourself.
Yeah, but sometimes, I hear you, Darren. Sometimes we're forgetful as well. Sometimes,
yeah, but it's a bit like the light in the fridge. You forget to cook. 9 times out of 10, no, 5 times out of 10 probably forget to cover the switch. The light comes on when you open the fridge, and then it's like, what do you do? So now we just keep it off all the time.
So, Maddie, do you know how we deal with that? We can constantly
take the bulb out.
Take the bulb out. Once you got the bulb in,
we have it covered the whole time, because I would also
forget every single week.
The whole week.
Then it's a problem. Again, let's just very quickly go over what we've said. We've said that the laws of cooking are different to many of the other melachas. You're allowed to start before Shabbos if you did all the work beforehand. When it comes to cooking, the rabbis gave a stricter rule, and they said that you shouldn't, because they're worried you're going to start fiddling around with it to try and make it cook faster and so on and so forth. So the way to deal with it is there's one of two ways. Either you put the metal sheet down, which covers the flame, or it covers whatever the equivalent is, whether it's the flame or whether it's the bottom of the oven, or whether it's the hot plate or the crock pot, even if you need it, and then you cover the dials. And the other way to deal with it is if the food, let's say in the crock pot, if the meat is raw. If the meat is raw, then there's nothing to worry about, because anyway, you're not going to be serving that Friday night. By the time it's the Shabbos day, it's going to be fully cooked anyway. Okay, guys.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear if this resonated with you. And if you'd like to discuss it further, you can get in touch with me. You can find me on Instagram at It's Gila Ross, or you can WhatsApp me. My number is in the show notes, and we can set up a time to discuss this further. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Have a wonderful day, and please take a moment to rate, review, subscribe, and share this podcast to anyone else who would benefit from it.